Alright, so today we are going to be talking about Shenhe and in two specific aspects, which is going to be her weapon and her constellations. Her weapon and her constellations are going to be a massive buff for Shenhe, as of course of any other character with their constellations and weapon, but today we're going to be talking about which one has more value and which one is the best for her. Should you end up pulling for the constellations, should you pull up for the weapon, or should you get both, or should you get none? We're going to be covering each one specifically by themselves, and then we're going to talk about both of them together, and then I'll be saying if they're worth it at all, or where you should stop, or where you should go. This is merely advice for anyone that wants to know where where the good stopping point is for Shenhe. Of course, if you want to C6 R5er or you want to C0 and not R1 at all, that is completely up to you. There's nothing wrong with stopping where you want to. It's your account, you do what you want with your primogems. This is merely just advice for anyone that's on the fence or needs to know information about either the constellations, the weapons, or anything in that nature. So before we get into the video, make sure to leave a sub and a like. I've been enjoying making this content for the guides and stuff for Genshin, so it's really fun to see all the comments and all that talking about the characters, and I love to reply to all the comments that I possibly can. But let's go ahead and talk about Shenhe and her weapon and constellations, and let's go ahead and talk about the weapon. The Calamity Queller is going to be her signature polearm, and this Calamity Queller is going to be boosting your attack percentage by a crazy amount. Now Shenhe, as you may know from the previous video that I have released, Shenhe uses attack percentage for her buff when it comes to her skill, and this buff is going to scale off attack percentage. Now attack percentage is a lot different compared to Bennett's base attack. Base attack for Bennett's buff, it is just his natural innate attack that is on his character and his weapon. For Shenhe, your attack percentage is going to be based off your artifacts, your weapon, your base your base kits of a character, their attack themselves. Anything that affects attack from other units buffs up until her own artifacts, her own weapons, her own ascension is going to be the main driver for this buff on her skill. So for the weapon, this is basically going to funnel a bunch of attack into that attack percentage for her buff. The Calamity Queller has a base attack of 648, which, if I'm not wrong, this is the highest base attack in the game, which is absolutely insane to have. This is going to make up for the difference that you see in the attack percentage main stat that is on this polearm, which of course this is the main stat. It's so low because of how high this base attack is, so it basically fills in for the attack percentage. You definitely want more base attack when it comes to having it as a main stat, I guess you could say, or having attack percentage at the main stat, because it allows that percentage to scale off the base attack, which is it being so dang high. Because of this polearm, you're gonna get a higher values of attack than if it was opposite, with a low base attack with a higher percentage on the polearm. So for the Calamity Queller, the passive is going to be gain 12% all elemental damage bonus, which is really nice. Obtain consummation, which I'm assuming that's how you say it, for 20 seconds after using an elemental skill, causing the attack to increase by 3.2% per second. This attack increase has a maximum of 6 stacks, and when you're not on the field, your consummation attack increase is doubled. So basically, the way Shenhe works, you're going to want to use her skill, then her ult, or her ult, then her skill, and then you want to switch off, and the buff is going to be increased because she's going to be off the field, and you're going to get more of the consummation attack buff. Now, specifically for this polearm, although the base attack is very high and attack percentage is up there, I guess you could say, this is going to be an overall buff to a lot of characters, be an overall stat stick for certain characters. The gain 12% all elemental damage bonus is going to help a lot for a lot of different characters depending on who you want to use it on. Although a lot of this passive, which basically increases attack by a lot, is going to be quite hard to use on other characters, because not a lot of characters need attack percentage really. It can be used, but usually you want crit rate, crit damage, or energy recharge, depending on the build you are using for a certain character. And a lot of characters, or some characters, snapshot their attack, so it's not like being off field is going to help a lot when increasing the attack damage. So there's not that many characters that have a lot of off-field use with this passive, and the only thing you can really use from this is the gain 12% all elemental damage bonus. and the base attack increase of course is really high, so overall you are going to get more damage out of it. But there are better pole arms at the end of the day, using energy recharge for emblem set, or EM for certain Burgeon or Dendro related basically builds, and then you have crit rate, crit damage for your normal standard DPS units. So Calamity Queller as a weapon for universal use, not really the best thing in the world, because not a lot of characters can really use this full passive and take, I guess you could say, a lot of benefit from the very high base attack. But for Shenhe herself, this is her best pull on for a reason. It's so much attack onto a character is going to allow you to have such a high buff when using your skill. So Calamity Queller for Shenhe, really amazing, of course, because it's her signature weapon, but overall value is not very high. This is a very skippable polearm if you don't really intend on pulling for it. Of course, if you want to have your Shenhe operate at the best efficiency, then having the Calamity Queller is going to be what you want. But overall, if you're looking for weapons that are going to increase your account level, I guess you could say, or give a big boost in what options you have to use as a polearm, this might be a skip when it comes to summoning for this polearm. Now, talking about the constellations, we have our 6 for Shenhe. Starting with Constellation 1 is going to be a pretty big deal, which is using her skill can be used more than one time. So the thing about Shenhe's skill is that it has a two-part effect to it. One if you press it, and one if you hold it. Now Shenhe's buff is going to change depending on the way you do it, depending on the duration and the icy quill stacks that you have. The passive is going to make a difference. So the passive is if you press it, your elemental skill and burst damage are increased. If you hold it, your normal, charged, and plunging attack damage is increased. With you having C1, you are able to get both of these buffs at the same exact time, because you will have two different charges. So you will be able to utilize the full passive of Shenhe for her skill. So this is a really big deal. You're going to basically be able to have a lot more damage buffs for your character. Only problem is you still have to abide by the icy quill effect rule basically. So anytime you do cryo damage, you're basically going to be losing all those effects, and at that point the passive is going to overwrite itself, I guess you could say. You're not going to be able to use it a lot. It will be buffed majorly because you'll have both up at the same time, but the icy quills are going to ruin it still by basically washing away once you've done enough damage, and you're not going to be able to use the full passive anymore. But C1 is really nice. You are going to be able to have less energy recharge on Shenhe because you are able to operate or generate more orbs or more particles for Shenhe. So the ER requirement is lower. You can have cleaner rotations. She'll always have a charge up if you only use one at a time, which I think would be the best use. She'll always have one up no matter what. You can have less energy recharge, which is going to be really good for Shenhe as a support. It's going to be overall good buff for Shenhe. Now for C2, this one is really good. During her ult is going to be 6 seconds longer, which is absolutely amazing. You're going to be able to use more DPS. You're going to be able to do more DPS while you're in this field. And then active characters within the skills field deal 15% increased cryo crit damage. So this is really nice. Definitely a really good constellation because it's going to be buffing your damage overall. And especially with a lot of these cryo characters like Anyu, Ayaka, anybody else that you want to use for cryo, you're going to have low crit rate and a fat ton of crit damage, and adding on more crit damage is going to make the damage skyrocket. So this is a really cool constellation as well. I do think it's not as worth as C2, I mean C1, but C2 is really good as well. C3 is the skill, +3. Now for Constellation 4 for Shenhe, basically when she uses her skill and you do more damage with it because it's getting buffed, Shenhe will gain a Skyfrost mantra stack. Now, based on how many times you've hit the opponent already, your next skill is going to end up doing more damage, and it's going to increase in damage by 5% up until 50 stacks. So you are going to be doing some massive damage with Shenhe, and you could do some main DPS Shenhe type stuff with this C4 if I'm understanding you right. I might be getting it wrong, but for what I understand, this is a damage buff to Shenhe, and when you are doing damage, you're getting that ice damage buff or cryo damage buff from Shenhe. This will increase her damage in her skill, and once you pop the skill again, you are going to be doing more damage. So that's going to be C4. Not really the craziest thing in the world. It will help you with your getting bosses down more quick. because you're doing more damage with Shenhe, and then you're going to be buffing all that type of stuff. So this is a cool constellation, not really worth compared to the first two, but that is going to be C4. C5 is her ult getting the +3, and then C6, this is where it shines. This is where Shenhe goes to work. C6 is when characters trigger Icy Quill using normal or charge attacks. These do not count towards the trigger quota. Now, holy crap, that is actually a big thing. One of the not major cons, but one of the cons for the Icy Quill effect or the buff that Shenhe gives is that after a certain while, you are gonna end up running out and the buff is no longer there. With C6, although this doesn't, go onto skill damage and burst damage, normal charge attack damage from the Icy Quill effect is massive. You have no idea. Your Ayaka could go from 18k to 10k charge attacks up to 60k, 70k charge attacks just from Shenhe's buff alone. So if you're gonna want to run a full, I guess you could say, normal or charge attack build Ayaka or Ganyu or Chongyun or Kai or something like that, they're going to be doing some massive damage with Shenhe. So C6 is really cool, but I do think that the most valuable constellations for Shenhe are her first two. Honestly, I do think C2 is a very high investment Shenhe. Like, if you want to go crazy and get her to her max potential, in my opinion, I do think C2 is a good place to stop. If you want to make Shenhe feel super duper comfortable and have, more options in the way you have your rotations and be able to utilize her buffs or passives the most, then C1 might be the best for you. In my honest opinion, out of the times I've been using her, and I've been using her ever since she released for her very first banner, I do think C0 is honestly super comfortable as is. The way you use Shenhe, right? You're gonna quick swap her off once you use her buffs, once you use her ult, and then you're gonna have to use everybody else's stuff, right? You're gonna have to use maybe Kazuha's E, Q, you have to use Bennett's Q, you have to use Shenhe's EQ, stuff like that. Then you do your damage phase with, in my use Ayaka, you're gonna use her burst, you're gonna use her charge attack, your normal attack, and by the time you cycle back, use Kazuha again, use Shenhe, she's gonna have her cooldown already down or cooldown already up. So she will have her E ready, and you might also have her ult ready because of all the cryo particles already floating around because of Ayaka, because of Kazuha's swirl. So I do think C0 Shenhe does feel absolutely amazing and feels honestly very comfortable. C1 can help a lot with, utilizing her full buffs, utilizing her full passives, and then C2 is basically super high investment Shenhe in my opinion, giving you that 15% increased cryo crit damage, and also helping the ult last longer, allowing you to, basically have higher or longer rotations of damage. Although I do think at a certain point, you will lose all your buffs from the other characters, so it's not the craziest in all honest opinion for the buffs to add more time, because you will have to cycle back through your characters to buff up your Ayaka or your Ganyu or something like that. So C2 is a very high investment Shenhe in my opinion. Everything else is not as crazy, like the normal charge attack damage not triggering. This could be really good in certain cases, but for the overall spender, for the overall user, I don't recommend C6, and then C4 is just a damage increase for Shenhe herself. So in my opinion, C2 for very high investment, C1 for super comfortable gameplay, super utilization of all her passives and buffs. But in my honest opinion, I do think C0 is perfect for Shenhe. She doesn't really need much for her, basically. I wish they would have maybe done some attack buffs or something from her constellations. Maybe that would have helped her a little bit more, or maybe add in something else. I don't know. I just don't think constellations are very required for Shenhe, but of course, if you want to go ahead and do it, if you really look like you're going to enjoy Shenhe, you're going to use her a lot, then if you want to invest her in constellations, you can. So basically for Shenhe, what is her best value? What do you think you should run for Shenhe? Should you get her weapon? Should you get her constellations? Should you do both? In my honest opinion, like I said, when I got Shenhe and ever since I've used her, she's felt very comfortable. I've been using her without constellations, and I have never had a problem with her rotations, with managing her cooldown. It's all very easy, very smooth. I don't think constellations are very needed for Shenhe, and I honestly don't think the Calamity Queller is very needed on Shenhe either. You could easily, I guess you could say, substitute the very high base attack Calamity Queller with maybe another attack percentage polearm, and there's many of them in the game. and then rock a double attack 18% piece. Usually her best build is Noblesse with, you know, giving that extra attack bonus to allies, and then rocking full attack percentage main stat artifacts. But there's a lot of options that you can run for Shenhe with the attack bonuses that you can have, especially because you have, you know, like the Wave Breaker spin. You can also stack on some energy recharge depending on, you know, certain weapons you want to use to help her get her ult more. I just think that Shenhe, you know, base kits is fine enough without weapon, without constellations. I don't necessarily think she needs either or to function absolutely like perfect. I think she's good C0 R0 to be honest. So if you're looking for Shenhe, if you're looking at her best value, I do think you don't have to summon for anything past her C0, her own character, and that's it. If you want to, you know, go in one step of investment, I guess for Shenhe specifically, the Calamity Queller, because overall you're gonna be boosting her base attack by crazy amounts, and then you can use her artifacts or her other stats and tweak them a little bit to help you be more comfortable with Shenhe. If you want to do more account wide valuability or something like that, then you want to run C1, or at least try to get C1. C1 will help a lot with, you know, keeping the rotations really clean, utilizing both effects of her passive. It'll help a lot. So overall, you don't have to summon for her weapon, you don't have to summon for her constellations. You can if you want, and they're very good choices to have for Shenhe because they both boost her abilities by a very great amount. But other than that, that's pretty much going to be it for this video. If you're going to summon for Shenhe, good luck. If you're going to be summoning for her weapon or cons, good luck. You don't necessarily need them, but if you're going to enjoy using her, if you think you can use her a lot, then go ahead, good luck. I hope, you know, basically you win all your 50-50s. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end. See y'all in the next one, and peace.